Good morrow, fine people of the internet. I need help. So, here's the story. My name's Mara Merlin, and I just watched the trailer for Game of Thrones Season 8 that was just released today, and I've got a buttload of thoughts. I may look like a lion at the moment, however, I can't really help that my hair is just giant and perpetually a mess, no matter how much I do to it. So, moving on to the important stuff, I have about 12 million other things I should be doing. I have a 6-page paper to do tomorrow, but this is really calling my attention. I'm super excited about this. This trailer, wow, there is so much in so little time. Let's unpack that. The trailer opens with Arya Stark running through the halls of what is presumably Winterfell. I'm gonna say Winterfell because it looks a lot like Winterfell. Arya looks scared, she's dirty, she is just petrified of something. My guess is that at that point, when she's running from things, it's most likely because the White Walkers have, I hate to say it, but breached the walls of Winterfell. That terrifies me, but the first voiceover that we hear kind of confirms this, because it's Arya being all sure about knowing death. She's talking about how she knows death and she's ready to face this one, this death threat and everything. And it's just such, and then it zooms in on her face and she looks very confident, and that confidence is just such a contrast from the fear that we see in the first few seconds of this video, which I find very, very interesting and definitely serves to like magnify and really show the audience what a huge threat these White Walkers are. Obviously we knew that already, but if Arya's scared, chances are no one is not scared of these White Walkers, and things aren't going too well for our favorite alive people, which is sad, but unfortunately I pretty much assumed this would be the case. She's talking about the god of death having many faces, and then the shot opens to a room full of people, most likely taking refuge from the impending White Walker invasion. One of these people is Varys. Now, Varys looks very, very concerned, a look of concern that we don't often see on Varys' face, because usually he's very calm, cool, and collected in the face of his threats, but that's mainly because the fact that he deals with mostly on a daily basis are people and the political threat that they pose, and he looks very, very worried. I don't blame him. It's definitely, he's used to dealing with the tangible, realistic threats, and here are these White Walkers, which is all very, you know, he's huddled in a basement with everyone else, and, or not necessarily a basement, but in a safe room. Yikes. Then it opens to the Greyjoy fleet, and at first we can just make out the Greyjoy boats with the symbol on them, and this could mean a number of things. However, when it shows what's inside the boat, it's a bunch of Lannister soldiers, which isn't too surprising, but leading them appears to be Jaime Lannister. Now, we only see the figure leading them from the back, but with the hilt of the sword in the back of the head and the armor that this person is wearing, I definitely think that it's safe to say that this figure is Jaime Lannister. Nobody else has a sword quite like that. Nobody else has similar hair color. Nobody else is really relevant enough that has that same appearance that would be leading those soldiers. So I think it's kind of safe to say from this point that either Cersei has died and he has assumed control of the Lannister armies, or that Cersei has decided to finally lend her support to the North. Maybe the North is just getting beaten up real super bad. Either way, Jaime Lannister has the Lannister armies on what's left of the Greyjoy fleet, making it, I believe, rather safe to assume that probably Cersei has decided to lend support to the North after all, which is very interesting. Also down below on the ship you can see a couple smaller figures who appear to be dressed like Northmen, so I'm guessing that they're working together as opposed to Cersei dying and Jaime just assuming control of the fleet. However, I could be wrong. Maybe he killed her. I have a whole theory about that, but I'll go into that in another video. The next voiceover is Bran Stark talking, and we see a shot of Tormund Giantsbane, Ed, and Beric Dondarrion walking through doors with a flaming sword. This shot is super duper exciting to me because if you recall, last we saw these figures last season, most of them were getting blasted off a corner of the wall by undead dragon Viserion, Now, Tormund Giantsbane is a character that I love, and I was hoping, praying that he would make it through. He is great comedic relief, he's a really fun character, and we see from this shot that he is in fact alive, which is awesome, at least for part of the season. Whether or not he makes it the entire season remains to be seen. He probably won't, because he's one of my favorites, and going by my luck, they'll kill all my favorites. Beric Dondarrion, I had a feeling that he'd be alive, to be quite honest, because there was all that talk about the Red God bringing him back time and time again, and I just don't see the Red God bringing him back time and time again just so he can get iced off the wall by an undead dragon. I think that he had something else to do, even if the Red God isn't as central of a figure as the Red Priests make him seem. I still didn't see Beric Dondarrion's storyline ending there. So the fact that he is walking through the doors with Tormund Giantsbane is super exciting to me, and I can't wait to see what they have in store for them this season, although chances are I probably will wish I had never said that soon enough. In the next few seconds, we see Bran Stark talking to Samwell Tarly, and the reason that this pairing is relevant to me is that, as of right now, two of their biggest parts of their storyline is that they know Jon Snow's true identity as the son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark, and I can definitely see this discussion between them being a discussion on whether or not they should tell him of their findings. Sam looks very concerned and very worried, and definitely there are a lot of concerned faces and worried faces throughout this whole trailer, but he looks more concerned in a friendly kind of sad way. So I think it's very possible that he could be worried about telling Jon about his true parentage, and almost maybe feel bad for his friend that he has to deal with all of this. Bran, it's also possible that Bran could give him some bad news about Jon's fate, which, I have a feeling that Jon may die in this next season, but it would make me super sad to see it happen. Either way, these two are the ones that know about Jon Snow's true identity as the true heir to the Iron Throne, the trueborn son, Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark. So they probably are talking about their knowledge of that, and that's super exciting to me. I hope this revelation happens earlier in the season as opposed to later in the season, but because it's Game of Thrones, I can't get my hopes up for anything, so. Then we hear Bran say, "Where you belong," and it cuts immediately to a shot of the Red Keep. This to me is very, very symbolic, as he's saying, where you belong, and possibly that voiceover could come from the very conversation in which Jon Snow learns of his true identity. So the Red Keep symbolizes Jon Snow being the true heir to the Iron Throne. I think that's a very interesting cut to make, and definitely they did it on purpose, if I had to wager a guess, so that's super cool to me. In the next few seconds, Cersei is shown, I think on the dock where they see off the boats. I think that's a safe assumption to make, and she's wearing black and gold. Now, the reason that the colors she's wearing are relevant is that, if you recall last season, she was mostly dressed in black and silver the entire time. So the fact that she's changed from black and silver to black and gold, at least in this shot, means to me that she's decided to pair up with the Lannisters for the time being, the remaining Lannisters. It makes me think back to the shot of Jaime Lannister on board of the Iron Fleet, because the prominent colors in that were black and gold, so it makes me think that she has at least temporarily joined the fray, and the fact that she's on a dock type area makes me think that she might even be seeing them off as they leave. She looks a little too happy about it though, so that's slightly unsettling to me. And you might be asking yourself at this point why I'm focusing so much on the clothes, but that's because if you think back, the wardrobe choices in Game of Thrones are very, very important for the character development, the alliances of the character. Sansa's hairstyle changed drastically with each new person she allied herself with. So when she was idolizing Cersei, she wore her hair like Cersei did. When it was Marjorie, she wore her hair like Marjorie did. And now Sansa wears her hair much like her mother Catelyn Stark used to. So Game of Thrones makes very pointed, very on-purpose choices with wardrobe, as they do for most things. So this is why the black and gold is so significant to me at this point in time. This leads into a shot of the Unsullied army marching towards Winterfell. with Jon Snow and Daenerys in the midst of their ranks. Because Jon Snow and Daenerys are not on the backs of dragons, it makes me think that they're really making a conscious effort to approach this as friends and not at all in a threatening way as they approach Winterfell. It's a really cool shot for me because it kind of just shows everything tying together, which I'm super excited about. And they seem to be taking a very united front on this. Jon Snow in this moment looks so much like Eddard Stark that for a second I thought that they had brought Eddard Stark back from the dead and just plopped him on horseback next to Daenerys. Obviously, this is not a thing that they did, but that seems important to me. The missing dragons from the last shot were presumably the ones that flew overhead over Winterfell that stunned Sansa, so my guess is Sansa was waiting for this parade of Unsullied and dragons to come by. This is probably the first time, judging by the look on her face, this is probably the first time she's seen the dragons, which is super cool. And then it leads into a cut of Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen in what I think is the crypt of Winterfell. This is relevant to me because I think that this could possibly be the aftermath of Jon Snow being told his true parentage. It would make a lot of sense for Jon to go where he goes a lot when he's seeking guidance, which is the crypt of Winterfell. Possibly, they could be standing in front of the statue of Lyanna Stark. From the perplexed, worried, overall angsty look on Jon Snow's face, honestly, it isn't too out of place, but I think it's safe to say that he's having a lot of trouble digesting the information of his parentage, especially considering the feelings that he has for Daenerys. Daenerys, when she's down there, is wearing a lot of furs, which you might just be like, oh, that's because it's cold. Well, yeah, it's cold in the north. But also, remember what I said a couple seconds ago, they don't make any choices by accident as far as the wardrobe goes with these characters. So her wearing all those furs could symbolize her making more of an effort to integrate with the Starks. Jon, looking as troubled as he is probably having some issues digesting the fact that he is in love with who is essentially his aunt. A little gross if you ask me. He's probably mulling it over in front of the statue of Lyanna for guidance and just trying to digest it all, take it all in. Behind all this is a backdrop of Jon Snow giving what I think is like a motivational speech, or just like kind of like a scared straight speech to the soldiers, to the people of Winterfell, who are rightfully petrified, I'm sure, and it's being spoken over what is happening in the scene, which is Gendry walking through like a forge type area, probably overseeing the makings of weapons, and I think behind him is Yara Greyjoy. Now, this could also not be the case as it's kind of blurry, but from where I have it paused, it looks a lot like Yara. There are probably a bunch of dirty northern women walking around. It doesn't have to be Yara, but I think it could possibly be Yara Greyjoy. It definitely looks a lot like her. And if it is Yara Greyjoy, then something must have happened that freed her and brought her to Winterfell, along with the rest of their allies, so presumably at this point she is safe and sound and doing her best to further the cause. I, for one, am looking very forward to the reunion of Gendry and Arya. I wonder how that's going to play out, and at the point where he's at now, with Gendry walking around and supervising everything, I'm going to guess that they've already run back into each other, because it looks to be at Winterfell that all this forging is taking place. In the next couple shots, we see Jorah Mormont riding by, and we see Missandei of Narth and Grey Worm, and they share a very passionate kiss, and that, honestly, it's sweet, but it fills me with dread also because it makes me think that Grey Worm is going to die. Either Missandei or Grey Worm might die, and it kills me because I love both of them as characters. I definitely think Grey Worm might fall in battle though, which would be super sad. But Game of Thrones, rather fitting ending. He's a warrior through and through, and I'm so happy that they found love. After that, there's what looks to be, well, there's definitely a battle raging, fire burning everywhere, and somebody is hacking away at White Walkers. From the form and the way they fight, I'd say it's either Brienne of Tarth or Jaime Lannister, and in the shot that follows, it is Jaime Lannister screaming about something, and the person behind him, at least to me, looks like Brienne of Tarth. It's kind of hard to tell because of the pace at which everything goes. It's a very fast-paced thing. Either way, I can't wait for the reunion between these two. I think that they work really well together, and I'd love to see them fight side by side in battle. I think that's something really exciting, and honestly, I think they could take on the whole White Walker army themselves. Obviously, they couldn't. I'm just trying to be supportive. Anyway, at one point, there's a very wide shot of the throne room in the Red Keep, the Iron Throne, and from this distance, it's kind of hard to tell, but Cersei is sitting on the throne and somebody is kneeling in front of her, hands clasped behind their back. I'm gonna guess at this point, judging by the color of the wardrobe, the build of the person, and just like what I think is the most likely situation, that this person kneeling in front of her is Jaime, and it makes me think that probably my earlier theories about Jaime finally getting Cersei to help with the battle in the north have come true. This is probably Jaime asking for her help, asking for the fleet, and just throwing himself at her mercy, knowing full well that she could in fact kill him. I don't think that she is going to kill him. Who knows? I could be wrong. I think that he might actually kill her, but more on that in another video I have coming up soon. Just from this wide shot, I would say that it's absolutely Jaime begging Cersei for help now that he's seen the threat to the north. After that, there's a shot of just Cersei wearing no armor at all, which is very interesting because way back a couple seasons ago, I think, she talked about the importance of wearing just like a little bit of armor. I think she was talking to Marjorie Tyrell when this happened, and from this shot, she's just wearing like a light gray. She's drinking wine, there look to be tears in her eyes, and she's wearing no armor at all. So my guess is she's probably talking to Jaime, who's the only person that we've really seen her not really wear much armor around. And from the tears in her eyes, it's probably an emotional conversation. I would also hazard a guess to say that this could even be her being told of bad news relating to Jaime, because we all know that at this point, Jaime's probably the last person that she would shed any tears over. Obviously, though, it's an emotional moment for her. She's not wearing any armor, which is very interesting because up until this point, she has tried her best to remain emotionless, at least in the last season, and very guarded. So a big moment for Cersei, I'm guessing, is what we're seeing here. After Cersei, the music swells dramatically, and there's a shot of Arya watching the dragons fly through some sort of canyon, and there's also a bunch, she seems to be in a line of like women and old people and children, which makes me think that she was benched for the initial battle. I believe that Jon Snow told her in no uncertain terms she was not allowed to be in the battle, to take part in the battle, even though she probably knows more about fighting than he does at this point. It's debatable, but she definitely would be very useful in this fight. And I think that this moment could be very important for her, as seeing the dragons may inspire her to join the fight, to disobey Jon's orders, because we all know in the past she has not been good at following orders. So this could be a little bit of the old Arya sparking through. Enough with that, a girl is no one nonsense. Obviously she's kind of resumed her Stark roots as she is wearing the Ned Stark hairstyle, and yeah, the fact that she's with all these old people, women, and children definitely makes me think that she was benched for this battle, but she is now about to join the fray. I feel like I should have like a Super Smash Bros. Type montage where it just pops up and it's like, Arya joins the fray. But unfortunately I don't have that, and I don't have the skills to create that, so just like, imagine please. The next voiceover that occurs is Jaime Lannister saying, "I promised to fight for the living," and talking about keeping his promise. This is very important for him as a character because he's constantly been referred to as an oath breaker, as a kingslayer, and so a big thing for him is sticking to his promises. He promised to fight for the living, and that's something he's going to do, and I think he's giving this speech. This speech sounds to me like something that he would say to Jon Snow or Sansa Stark or Daenerys or all three of them, as he's trying to convince them that he wants to help them in this fight, that he would be a good aid in this fight, and that he's very useful, and trying to help convince them of where his loyalties lie, because obviously we know that the Lannisters and the Starks have a spotty history with each other at best, so this could be him trying to make amends and convince them of his true intentions, which are to fight for the living. And judging by the fact the next shot looks to be him in the hall at Winterfell where they receive people, I definitely think that this is a safe assumption to make where the speech is coming from. To me, it's very cool because it's tying a lot of things together. I just love seeing my favorite characters interact with each other, especially because it's something that we don't see a lot of in this show, but in this season, I this is the end, so it kind of has to happen. There's a split second of a hand closing around what I believe to be a spear, and I actually managed to pause it, and to me it looks like, I thought it actually at first could have been Arya picking up a spear or a sword or a weapon of which to fight with, but it looks to be, from what I can see, a man's hand closing around a spear. And one of the next shots is Jon Snow, I think it's Jon Snow, running towards something. So to me that says Jon Snow took one of the spears that a White Walker has thrown and is rushing like a fool towards his doom, which may or may not happen. But I think it's one of the White Walker spears, and I think he might be actually trying to use it against them, rushing towards them like a lunatic, with no regard for his own life. This would not surprise me in the slightest, but it also scares the heck out of me. So, after that, it shows Jon Snow and Daenerys approaching the two remaining dragons that are on the living side, and I definitely think that this could be Jon Snow's chance to really embrace the Targaryen side of his identity. I think it's a really cool shot, and it could be the first time that he ever becomes a dragon rider and really comes into his own on that. After that, somebody is fighting in a very familiar style. I paused it. From what I can tell, it's Arya, and she has finally joined the fight, picked up a spear, and is beating the ever-loving crap out of people. It looks very similar to moves that Syrio Forel used to do, and that we saw her do a lot in Bravos. So really cool. Arya was inspired to join the fight, so that she is doing. Very exciting. Good for her. I really hope she doesn't die. However, I think that she will live through this season, just based on gut instinct. The last few seconds show us glimpses of Tyrion, Daenerys, and a bunch of other people just really deep in thought. I'm surprised we haven't seen more of Tyrion in this trailer. I really do think that he might outlive them all. He seems to always find his way out of sticky situations. I love Tyrion. He's my favorite character. I definitely want him to make it. He's just the absolute coolest. Then they show Podrick Payne and Brienne of Tarth waiting to go into battle, so we can make the assumption that they at least make it far enough to see battle with the Night King. I don't think that both of them are going to make it. I really hope they both do, but I think that we'll at least see like a good 2/3 of our favorite characters die in this season. Sad, but most likely the case knowing this show. Then of course we see the hooves of one of the undead horses. Probably, I mean, the Night King would probably be riding on a dragon, but if he's not, maybe those of the Night King or one of the White Walkers. Either way, very ominous. All the characters look worried, all the characters look scared. I don't blame them. Honestly, I don't know how they're not crapping themselves. I would be a puddle of goo. I would like to say that I'd be able to fight for the living, although I don't know if this would be the case. More likely than not, I would lock myself in the crypt and never come out. So these have been my theories just based on this trailer and my speculation of what could be happening in the scenes that these bits were taken from. Let me know if you have any theories or if you noticed anything different in the trailer that you don't think I covered. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, why waste your time doing something negative when you could be putting positive energy into the world instead? I will have more Game of Thrones stuff on this channel. So be sure to subscribe if you are a big fan of Game of Thrones, because as the season draws nearer, more and more of this stuff will be Game of Thrones related. I'm very excited. Once again, my name is Mara Merlin, and thank you so much for watching. Signing off for today.